What is up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Beer to Talk podcast. If you're new here, my name is Adam. I am your host. I was born in a small town, raised by a single parent, kicked out of college, and now I run a six-figure business here in DC, one of the most expensive cities in the country. And there's 20,000 wedding photographers here. The competition's high. I've moved my markets multiple times, and I've been through the bad-ish that a lot of photographers go through, and they give up. And I'm here to tell you today, don't give up. Today's your day. If you're new here, subscribe to the podcast. It'll be awesome to have you here. Today's episode is going to be really, really cool. We've got Chip Dizard coming on, one of my favorite speakers and teachers. He's been on the podcast circuit a lot lately, so I feel jealous that he has given his time to other people, but we're going to hope the Beer to Talk is the best because I'm just biased and very competitive, so we hope it's the best. But he is an expert at streaming weddings, and he's kind of pivoted. He's always did it before COVID, but now during COVID, it's really been a busy thing for him. He's training people, building teams to help stream weddings. And honestly, I was so impressed at the gear and kind of the workflow. You didn't need a lot. You needed to know what you needed to know about everything, but it didn't have to be a huge requirement, and he's going up to weddings now where they only want him for streaming, and he's just there for an hour and a half. And honestly, that sounds kind of fun and kind of refreshing and something different for what people need during this time. So really, really cool. We also talked to Chip a little bit up front about kind of racism in the wedding industry, the speaking industry as a black man in America. What does that look like? And so that was something that I really wanted to kind of touch on and just kind of get his perspective a little bit. And I feel like that's something we'll probably do with every person of color who comes on the podcast, whether you like it or not, because that's something we need to be reminded of and kind of work towards making a better world. So, and Chip's going to be a part of that. And I love that. And I hope that as your listeners that we can encourage you to do that. And I'm rambling a little bit, but I feel like that's where we're at. So enjoy this episode with Chip Dizard. He's absolutely incredible speaker, super positive, really fun to listen to. So without any further ado, here's Chip Dizard. Chip, it's so good to have you on the podcast, man. How are you, buddy?
Hey, Adam. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we joked about this pre-show, man, but I don't know what it's going to take, but I want this to be your favorite podcast interview ever. So I saw you on Nathan's podcast, and I was like, oh, and it was so good. And I was like, man, we got to figure out a way to make this better. So I don't know if we'll get there, but I want to.
Man, hey, we're in the DMV, so we're like bros. So no, we're going to do the daggone thing.
Exactly. You know what's up, man. So I love it, man. But no, that episode was super good, and I feel like it was really timely. And you're a DMV guy that I had seen you kind of around, but it was one of those things where I didn't really know. I didn't even know you were from the DMV, but which for anybody who doesn't know, that's Delaware or DC, Maryland, Virginia. So for people who are not familiar, that's just what we call it. But
it's not where we get our license.
Yeah, it's not where we get our license or inspection. Yep. But I'd kind of seen you in the WPPI world, I think, for either Facebook ads or something like that. And then this past summer, man, I just saw your name popping up on all the podcasts I listened to, and I was like, wait. This guy lives 25 minutes away from me. So welcome to the show. Give me a little bit of background on Chip before we kind of dive into everything. I told your assistant that I wasn't going to tell her what we talk about. So
Yeah, thank you. She didn't tell me that either. She said, just show up. No. So, Adam, I've been doing weddings and portraits for 10 years now. I started in 2010 in May. Every Memorial Day is when I remember how long I've been doing that. Probably longer than I thought. But before then, I was in education, a teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. So that's awesome. I kind of got the teaching bug, and before I went full time in 2015. And before then, I was working in church and ministry with video production, and that's how I really got into weddings, because people at the church asked me to do their weddings. I was like, no way, I'm not doing it, and then they kept on asking me, and then I said, I'm going to shoot just like it's a church service. So it was more video. Then I kind of morphed more into photography, which I was already doing. And then once I quit my full-time job in 2015 as a teacher, I started getting was getting more busy. And then really in 2017, 2018 is probably when I started getting on the speaking and training and mentoring circuit. So you probably heard of me. Maybe 2018 was my first WPPI and some other things. So it's just, because I had a mentor that told me, say, hey, Chip, you're going to be busy. You're going to do this. And I was like, listen, nobody knows who the heck I am. I'm in a little school in Baltimore. Nobody knows who I am. What are you talking about? He said, trust me. Just trust the process. And that's all I did. And I just started, using not only my work, because I feel like you have to have good work, but you also have to have a good brand. And then you have to have good contacts. So 3 things I always say: good work, good brand and marketing. And then people have to know who the heck you are.
Yeah.
Good contacts to make it in this business.
I love it, man. That's kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk back in the day used to always say, like, we all deal in people's attention, and it's like you can have the good work, like you mentioned, and good work ethic, but it's like you need the attention. Like it sucks, right? Like it's probably the least fun part of our job, but it's like people need to know who you are. Like you need to be top of mind. People are like, hey, I need somebody to stream weddings, or do you know any Facebook ads gurus? They'll be like, Chip Dizard, he's coming through. So no, that's awesome. I didn't know that you were a teacher in Baltimore, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I did that for 5 years. I was working at the district office. I got laid off, and then I didn't plan to be a teacher. I got kind of into it.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I mean, it was fine, but it was just time for me to go. It taught me a lot about organization, and I work really well with start and end times.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm speaking or whatever doing, I try to make sure that if we start something, if they give me 35 minutes, I stick to 35 minutes because I just remember in my head having a bell, and you had to get through that lesson in 90 minutes. In 90 minutes, people are like, how can you talk for 90 minutes? I was like, easy. Easy. And then you're like, okay, 85 minutes, I'm done. Boom, let's go.
Wow, I love that, man. That's awesome. What when you did teach, what grade did you teach?
I taught high school. So I taught photography and videography. So it wasn't English, it wasn't anything. So I taught 11th and 12th graders. I didn't like the 9th and 10th, but 11th, 12th, especially when I taught 12th graders, half the year they were checked out anyway, ready for college, right? 11th graders were probably my favorite because they were all invested. 10th graders really immature. So just think about when we were in 10th grade or 9th grade,
Yeah.
9th grade, we were coming from middle school. We were low men on a totem pole, right?
Yep.
And then by the time we got to 11th grade, we thought that we were great. At 12th grade, we knew that we were great, right? And then we go back to college and we become a freshman again. And we're like, oh my God, we're starting from the bottom, like Drake said, right?
Yeah.
Start right
every single time. I feel like those. I miss some of those resets though. Honestly, like we need every 4 or 5 years just that humility again, where you're like, okay, I'm not it. I'm not the cat's pajamas or whatever. The newest things. Like that's a good thing to know. That's cool though. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. That's how I want to ask you. Just dive into you a little bit of what you do. So you do portraits. You do a lot of branding. You're a wedding photographer, of course. You are one of the guys that I follow on Instagram, and you put up what I think people think I do, and I'm not doing half what you're doing. I don't think. You look busy. You look freaking, and maybe it's just right now, right? Like post lockdown, everything's big. It's also our biggest kind of season, but I know you for wedding photography, Facebook ads, and wedding streaming. Is there anything else you do? Is there anything? And speaking,
speaking and mentoring. I don't know as much, but yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell. Those kind of things. I've been doing streaming just post COVID. Really, I mean, I've been doing it prior, but like a lot more now. But
totally.
Yeah, and just helping people, you know what I mean? And not to just, here's the thing, a lot of people can say that they're busy and because they say, well, some people say, well, if you're that busy, you need to raise your prices. You're doing too much. You're doing too much. I'm like, well, yes and no. You still have to get some work and you have to show.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Adam. People like to, unfortunately or fortunately, like get on a moving train. So if you see a new iPhone or Android that's released, and if you don't see a line around the Apple Store, people's like, oh no, it's not good.
Yeah.
So what I tell people to do is create those virtual lines in your stories and your stuff for people, because they're like, man, I just see you everywhere. You're all the time. And yeah, I am busy. Yeah, I am booked a lot. I'm fortunate, but I know there are slow times. And in March and April, I wasn't doing anything, and I was creating content. And I know that in December, at least in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, it gets slower because it's colder. January gets slower, in February. So I understand that it's like we store things for hibernation, right? So we do a lot during the fall, and then in the winter, it may slow down a little bit, but we have to have enough, especially as entrepreneurs, to do that.
Yeah.
So
100%. And you lead a team, don't you? You've got a few people on the team, contractors and such.
Yeah, we do. We have a 3 people assistant, other photographers, and it's been great. It's been great. It's a lot going on, but it's one of those kind of things I wouldn't trade it. Like when I wake up in the morning, I love teaching, I love helping kids, but I just transfer that to adults and to the team, and I don't miss anything. I love what I do.
Yeah, no, 100%. I can tell by watching you, and whether you're working or you're vacationing in Mexico, you're making it happen.
Yes.
So I love that. I want to ask kind of getting a little bit deeper question. Tell me about, you've been a photographer for about 10 years, post-teaching, right? Or I'm getting my timeline right. What has that experience been like, in the teaching and the speaking, that kind of stuff as a black man, like what is that, have you seen a difference that maybe some of your white peers have gotten during that time, or maybe like, it sounds silly. Is that something you haven't noticed? I imagine it's something you've noticed though. What has that been like? What's that process been like?
Yeah, so it's real interesting. There's a young lady that her name is Dr. Tamaya Colvin. I don't know if you heard of Tamaya Colvin.
Yeah.
And with the photo cookout. So she created this conference, and she had this email list about 4 or 5 years ago. And I said to Tamaya, hey, I want to be a speaker in this area, but I don't know anybody. People don't know who the heck I am. And she said, Chip, you know what? We're going to create a little email list or a private Facebook group of 10 African-American or black photographers.
Yeah.
And I want you to apply to every single conference I say. And they didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were. One of the conferences was called Reset. And these were conferences where black people really didn't speak, and there were some other conferences, not because they didn't want us to speak. It was just, they just didn't have any.
Sure. The circles weren't touching. Yeah.
It was nothing. I don't want anybody who goes to these conferences thinking that I think the conferences are racist, because they're not. It was just, they didn't have it.
Yeah.
So I started applying, and some of them said no, some of them said yes. And I went. And sometimes I was the only black guy there. It's mostly women a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I just spoke, and I just gave my best. And I didn't act like it was a little strange at first. I was like, but I said, you know what? Some of my best relationships out of those conferences has happened. One is called a Reset conference. I don't know if you heard of that conference before.
Yeah.
It's called Reset. And they're doing it in Kentucky now. It's coming up in September, the end of September. But I'm saying that it was a little different because 3-4 years ago, really about 3 years ago, 2017, I didn't know people. They didn't know. I didn't have receipts. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for somebody to take a chance, and I didn't have a portfolio of, people want to hire you. Here's the thing. When people, you know how it is. When you're a speaker for a conference, people want to know that you can deliver. Because if you don't, photographers especially will go and say, they won't say it's bad. They'll say, Chip was okay. They won't, I'm just being honest. I'm being very transparent. People will say it's bad. And then silently, they will say, no, it wasn't that good. And I'll say, you know what? Whenever I speak, I need to make sure whether it's 5 or 500 people, I need to give them my all. And I learned that from a friend of mine who's a pastor. And a quick story, he was pastoring a small storefront church. And I went one day to hear him speak, and he had 10 members in the church. This was way before COVID, right? So, and he was preaching in the church like it was like 150 people in there. I was like, my God, what's he doing? And I was like, and he told me, he said, Chip, I don't care if it's 10 people or 10,000 people. I'm going to give it all I got. And from that day on, I didn't care about audiences. I don't care about followers. They're vanity metrics, and I get people wouldn't listen to me if I'm talking about Instagram if I had 10 followers. I get that. Trust me, I get it, because that's just how life is. But I'm not obsessed with it. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not obsessed with that, because people get impressed. When I was at WPPI, there was a picture I put up, and I had like 500 people listen to me at WPPI, and people were like, oh my God. I was like, it didn't matter if 10 people on it. That was my ego if 10 people were in the class, rather than 500. But I was fortunate that 500 people, whatever it was, showed up at WPPI. But I think that we as speakers and mentors and coaches, we let other people define our value instead of us defining our own value. We let other people define our value. And I think that until I was confident with myself, and when I got there with that, with some small speaking gigs, I was able to do bigger things.
So it sounds like, in the speaking world, you needed to find your own confidence, and then you also needed to have your virtual line, like you talked about. You needed to have your Apple iPhone line for Chip, for Chip speaking gigs.
Yes.
Right.
But then also, Adam, there was a speaker I remember I was speaking just recently last year, and I'm not calling her name because she's a popular speaker, and we were grabbed an Uber together and at a venue, and we were going. She said, Chip, and she's white, and she said, I know I get a lot of opportunities because who I am. And I was like, wow. And she said, you probably don't get the same opportunities, but I want to make sure your name is known.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing I know about people. No matter if you're good, you're good. It doesn't matter who you are, what color, what race, what creed. If you're good, you're good. If you're passing on information that helps people make money and helps people move their business forward, and that's what I was doing, right? I just wasn't talking fluff. I'm talking about you're good. It doesn't matter what race you are. So as long as I focus on that, and if people saw me as a black man, that's okay.
Yeah.
But now, since the Black Lives Matter movement, since other things, I've been pivoting and speaking more on that now. Now, of course, I'm always going to be a Facebook ads, Instagram person doing this, but I feel compelled, just who I am, not to stay silent about those types of things, especially in our industry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we had a good friend of mine. His name's Gary Williams, Master Williams on Instagram, and we had him on, I want to say like 2 years ago, and I was kind of asking him about racism in the creative industry, and not necessarily weddings, but he owns an agency called Creative Theory, and I was kind of just talking to him, and a lot of what I learned from him and his take was that there were those opportunities that he got passed up on, but he was plenty qualified, or just little like social things, that people weren't thinking about. That again, part of like my own privilege is that I would never notice, right, until somebody told me. And this is really interesting. And then in the wedding world, we had some conversations with DC Wedding Week, Jasmine Smith, and that whole crew.
Yes, that's a good friend. Yes,
yeah, and it was a balance. The positive side of it, that I took was like was kind of what you mentioned, was like the quality is there. We need to not have such a cliquish, because you see it, right? Like they're like most of the weddings I photograph are either white people, you have a little bit of Asian, you have some interracial and stuff like that. But the number of just African American solely weddings, like by itself, is very few and far between, and my personal friendship groups and networks are growing. And then at the same time, I have my friends. I have a friend, Dio, who photographs like all Nigerian weddings, and there's not a white guy to be seen. And at some level, I'm like, hey, that's okay. That's both are representative of that neighborhood, that culture, that family, that story, whatever. But at the same time, I don't want it to be separate, for the sake of it just being separate, So. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I just was curious. What's one of the things over the last few months? Obviously the Black Lives Matter movement has been around for a few years, specifically like since Ferguson. And then obviously racism in America has been around for a long time. Not to laugh. So what has been the biggest thing for you personally, as far as it goes for our industry, that you've been comfortable talking about, or what's the biggest thing you've noticed?
Awareness, Adam. I really feel that people want to know. I'm hoping. So and here's the thing that I've said this before, but I want to reiterate this to you and your audience, is that as me as African American black man in America, I'm not going to write off every person white who says something off brand, because ignorance sometimes is just out there, and it's okay. And I'm giving people grace. And I know that may not be popular with some people, but it's just my opinion, because I've started like even an email list about diversity and sending things out about it. And I will send that to you in the show notes. So if people are interested in it, it's no selling. I'm not selling it. I'm just giving resources and telling my experiences about this. So one of the things I've seen is that it's giving an avenue for more open dialogue, because people want to know, at least some.
Yeah.
And of course we see these posts, and of course there's some big photographers or videographers I follow that post some stuff that I necessarily don't agree with, and it's hurtful. I'm not going to go on a rampage on them online, because I don't think that's a forum for them. I may not use their products or services as much, or if they have a product or service, but I'm saying that I've seen that people have been open to the dialogue with it. And I think as long as we're open, and we can have a constructive, we don't have to agree on everything, and I'm okay with that. But we have to come to meeting of minds and saying, you know what, this is my opinion. And this is how it makes me feel. I just want you to understand how it makes me feel. If you just acknowledge that, say, Chip, I've never done this, but if this makes you feel a certain way, okay, I get it. Yeah. I've just seen a lot more open dialogue in the industry and a lot more. At first, we were looking like, oh my God, Washingtonian, this person's putting out a black list for this, black list for that, and it's okay, but I'll be on a list. That's fine. But we all want to be on a list because we're qualified, not because of the color of our skin.
Yeah.
And that's where black people and black photographers want. And we understand that things have never been fair. That's okay, because we know we have to work harder, and I'm okay with that. But I just want to make sure when people I'm mentoring, whatever color they are, because I mentor people from all races, all walks, that you give your best.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a shirt that says GSD now, get stuff done, right? So I just want to make sure that we get stuff done. If you see that with me on my stories, if you follow me, I'm passionate. It's not about bragging. It's not about showing how much money I can make. And I'm talking about, people say, oh, you make six figures. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I care about what impact. Because at the end of the day, who cares if you make seven figures if you don't have a fulfilling life? Yeah. Who cares?
I'm ready. You can keep going. No, just kidding.
Okay. No. No, you're good.
It's so true though. Yeah. I'm curious, we won't stay on this forever, but it is something I feel like I've been watching for a few years and again, for me, it feels like real life, right? Like I live in DC, Chocolate City. I've led worship teams on U Street. It used to be Black Broadway. My wife is a DC public school teacher across the river. Like we have some level of knowledge, and we moved to DC for those reasons, to serve this community. And so it's like, we're curious and we got to talk about it. And I think too, the idea is like, yesterday or whatever, Breonna Taylor, at some level, at a tiny sliver, her family got justice, but at the same time, there was a settlement. But like a situation like that is one that 2 months ago, everybody was talking about, right? And then it goes away. It doesn't hit the news cycle anymore. It's no longer popular to talk about. There's no black squares or boldness on Instagram or anything like that. And so I think part of me was like, I had to check my own self and say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that I am including the people who are great, of all colors and everybody like that in my podcast and everywhere we do that. And I feel like, I'm biased. I thought we did a pretty good job, but I was like, all right, I need to make a conscious effort to be inclusive, to go against, the system that's already created, right? Because the system is like, for me, is normal life. And I don't realize that it's bad until I, am told it and I have to fix it. But my next question is, all that to say is, what is that line though? You mentioned like, we saw a lot of that, right? A lot of this like kind of awkward, Target could come out and be like, hey, here's our 10 most popular African-American kids books, and Washingtonian and be like, hey, here's 10, African-American wedding vendors that you're going to love or whatever. What's the line between them checking a box, but at the same time, those 10 vendors being awesome, like what's that line between not feeling like you're pandering?
Yeah. I get it, Adam. Great question. I think that people have asked this question a lot, and I've even spoken with like the Wedding Wire about that, because you don't want to feel like it's just doing it to check that box, right? So what you do is that you ask around and you look and you vet people. You understand what I'm saying? You always vet people, because in this industry, they have the education, but what I call, you have to read receipts. You look at their reviews. You look what other people said to you. I have said, like when you invited me on a podcast, you watched me, you followed me, you looked at me, you asked people. I see his name. Yep. So he's got to be solid. So you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? So I think that it's like cream rises to the top. So I think there is a line, but I don't mind. I don't mind us being featured, but to check the box is just to do it, to say you did it. Of course, that is not what I don't like that at all, of course. But if you vet the people on a list if you put people out, if you ask around, people like my friend Tamiko, people who run big conferences, ask for us to be ambassadors of camera companies. That's coming out now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Ask for us to be, explorers of light. I shoot Sony, so I see some Sony ambassadors that are black and brown, and so those are kind of things that actually mean something when there's action. It's fashionable now, but can we keep the same energy 2 years from now?
Right, exactly.
1 year from now. So can we keep the same energy? So I like it now, and when it's not as fashionable, because people are like, well, hell, y'all had a black president, so everything should be right in the world. Well, I mean, I know that sounds crazy. I know you're laughing, but I'm just people have said that to me. I legitimately not said it to me, but I've heard that. Well, you got everything you need. And when you get this, and no, it's bigger than political. It's a system that you don't know about that is there. When you get stopped by an officer, we got the same cop. There's totally different reactions that I will have no matter how much money I have. If I have a hat and a beard and you have a hat on and a beard, which we both have, and two separate reactions can happen to us and two separate outcomes can happen. And I'm clear of that. And I know that I have daughters, so I don't have a son. I know if I had a son or my nieces and my nephew, I would tell them they have to act a certain way when a police officer does that. And you see these videos, they've come up, and people are like, wow, I never knew you had to do that. And that's okay, because we live this every day. And I know that I've been stopped by the police, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what your name is. All I know, they see your skin, and if I get out of the car without my hands up, it could go terribly wrong, and I could be the next, George Floyd, or that guy's my age. You know what I mean? I mean, God rest his soul, but I could be the next person on a T-shirt or a next, a hashtag, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
We're better than that. So I think the industry is changing. I just want the energy to continue to happen, and I'm just grateful that people are coming to the forefront about this.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's one thing to not know and say, okay, man, that's awful. All right, let's try and fix that, right? Or at least when you tell like a white person, you're like, okay, oh wow, I've never experienced it, but I trust Chip. I know that it's real. There's stats there, and and then like the system part of it, for anybody who doesn't know, like systemic racism, that's a portion, right? Being pulled over, and then redlining, Jim Crow laws, the prison industrial complex, how our schools funding is related to property taxes, white flight, all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, those are systems, right? Those are things that somebody designed intentionally to harm. And the way that I can see it now, Chip, is like 5 years ago, I didn't think about it, or 7 years ago, I didn't think about it. When I moved to DC, though, it no longer was this thing I couldn't touch and feel. It was this thing where I was like, no, Black Lives Matter is a thing because Chip matters. Chip's my friend. Chip matters. And I'm like, my life matters, but like my life is not the one, on fire right now, or where it looks like the fire department doesn't need to come and fix this situation, in my life. And it's, and so I think for people listening, part of my goal is like, I have no idea the demographic of this audience. I assume it's mostly white, but it's like, help giving them a safe place to listen and learn and hear Chip's story and say, hey, this is real. This is not just some partisan thing. This is not some news thing. Like, this is our friends and fellow photographers' lives,
And I want people to know that they can ask the questions without feeling judged. And like I said, I'll send it's chipdizard.com/diversity. That's the link in the show notes.
I love it.
And you can go there and ask a question. You don't even have to put your email address in there. You can just ask the question. I will answer it in a private email thing. So you don't even you can be anonymous. So you're like, oh my God, I always want to ask a black guy this question, but I never want to know. You know what I mean? I know it sounds crazy.
No, it's
but
real,
I'm just saying that the safe spaces for that are there, and you don't have to feel like, oh my God, it's going to be screenshotted and put on Instagram, and I'm going to get unfollowed by 20 black photographers, and they're going to go, rise up against me. No, this is not what it's about.
No.
I'm not. That's not even my personality, bro, at all. If you know me, I'm just like, no, But we want things in decency and order. But we have to create the spaces, like I said, for the dialogue to begin. So this has opened up the broader conversation conversation, not only in America, but for people who really just want to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lady I was talking to real quick, Adam. She was in Utah, and she said, "Chip, listen, I'm a photographer. We just don't have that. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, where the black population is like 1% maybe.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So I just don't know. So help me understand, because I do not interact until I come to this conference. I said, well, this is what you need to do. So this is what I'm doing. No, I'm not charging for this information. I'm not running workshops. I'm not writing papers. All I'm doing is just providing information. And information changes situations. And that's all it does. Is what you do with the information. I'm sorry. What you do with the information changes a situation. Because I can give you the information, but if you don't do anything with it.
Totally. No, 100%. One of my old pastors used to say, our knowledge goes way beyond our obedience of the knowledge.
Wow.
And it's like the idea
That's
is like
deep.
our action doesn't line up with everything we know, right? Like I should have a six pack with everything I know about nutrition and dieting.
Right.
But
me too.
my obedience is not there. My obedience is not there.
Yes.
I appreciate you sharing about that stuff, man. It's one of those things where I feel like it's, I had kind of felt since June, since George Floyd specifically, there had been a loss of energy, or it had been started trending down. And I was like, this is something, these are the times to talk about it. Like the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war kind of stuff is like, we got to talk about it when it's not just the hot topic, when it's not fueled. And I know a lot of those people that, I luckily got to ask some of those silly questions, right? Some of those dumb questions that people are scared to ask in a safe manner. But I appreciate it. That's really cool that you open up yourself to be like, hey, you can ask me, you can ask Chip. Because I feel like you see those things flying around on Instagram. They're like, hey, don't ask your one black friend these questions. But at least for Chip says he's open. So you can ask Chip whatever.
You can ask me. Yeah. And I won't. And you don't even have to put your name on there, your email address. You can just ask it and just go. It's good.
I love it.
And as long as you're on my list, I won't spam you, and I'll just answer the questions.
I love it. Well, dude, let's talk about how you've pivoted this year. I feel like into streaming weddings, and there's a few people that I've seen do it, but this year, man, I feel like you were like, I got the skill set, got the know-how, right? Because the church background, and you did a little bit, and then COVID was like, let's punch it in the face. So, talk to me a little bit about that. What did that look like pre-March, and then what does that look like now? Are you streaming everything?
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I just went to T-Mobile to get another hotspot. It's crazy, right? Because my hotspot wasn't doing enough, but pre-March I was doing it. One of the first weddings I did in 2010 was a live stream wedding with video. Wow. It was at a church, and it was using church cameras. It was SD, wasn't even high definition, and it was just there. I was doing it maybe once or twice a year, and then I saw a couple years ago, brides.com asked me to some question about live streaming, and I just gave them some answers. They found me because I had a blog post up. So this is the thing, I know people hate writing blog posts, but I wrote a blog post about live streaming on my WordPress site and whatever, and I put it up. I didn't know anything about it. Then all of a sudden I came up, and then I'm on the first page of Google when you type wedding live streaming. I'm probably still there now. And so I get all these inquiries. I started looking at my stats as soon as COVID hit, that all my stats came from live streaming. I said, you know what? I'm going to change my homepage, my front page on my website. I'm going to do this. And I reimagined the blog post, I put it up, did some more stuff, and the inquiries just start coming in. And I started hiring other people to do live streamings. I get at least 2 to 3 inquiries a week for live streaming just for the weddings. Not doing the photography part, but just the live streaming part, if I can. Some of them I turn away because we're too booked, but a lot of them are from the D.C., Maryland area. Some of them, like I got one in New York, an Indian one in New York. I gave it to a colleague of mine. So what I try to do, if you're in my network, what I say in my network, if I know that you can do what you do, and I don't need referral fees, anything like that. I just give it to people, because I know that when you bless other people, it comes back to you. You just do. So prior to COVID, of course, I did 1 to 2 a year. Now we're doing at least, I've done at least like 10 to 15 at least or more.
Wow.
Like since COVID. Small backyards from Waldorf, Maryland, if you know, that's in Southern Maryland, to Aberdeen, Maryland. That's all the way closer to Delaware. So and in DC and in Northern Virginia area. So, and I travel too. So, but mainly in the Maryland, DC market. So it totally looks different. Totally had to reimagine my business, my pricing, just everything, and create workflows for it.
Yeah.
And I'm training people. And I created a training package for people to learn how to do it because people ask so many questions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I have some of those questions I want to ask you. Tell me, and we're into the gear side of things for sure. And you complimented my webcam setup, which made me very happy.
Yes.
That was my quarantine project, was getting that working. Because I guess on Canon cameras now, you can just go single USB to a Mac and it'll come up with this little free app called Cam Twist. And on the Sony, we had to be a little bit more. I had to get a little bit more creative. But talk to me about the technical side of streaming a wedding. So do you do that with a regular DSLR mirrorless or old school CCD? What's that look like? What's that signal chain look like?
Yeah. So really, any camera that you can use has HDMI out, and all of them have them these days, right? HDMI mini out, HDMI either the mini or I can't remember the one over top of the HDMI mini, but it's an HDMI port out because that can carry the audio and video, or really the video. I use a separate plug for video for audio, but I use a A7 III Sony, or I have a little small camera. But my main camera I use is a mirrorless because usually a ceremony doesn't go longer than an hour or 45 minutes if I'm doing that. If it were longer, I would use a traditional video camera. So I have like a Panasonic or a JVC that actually just records to a chip or card,
right?
Continuous that doesn't have a 30-minute limit.
Yeah.
But most photographers have a DSLR or mirrorless nowadays. I shoot mirrorless. I'm a Sony guy right now. And that's what I use. And then I go into this thing called a Teradek VidiU. I don't know if you heard of that before, Teradek.
Yeah, but that's converting the video signal into
the streaming. Yeah, So I don't bring my laptop. I used to bring my laptop back in the day. I used to bring a laptop, but it was just too cumbersome.
Yeah.
So I bought it. It goes on top of the camera, the hot shoe, and it goes from there. Or you can use something another friend of mine has, and we use my colleagues. We use something called Sling Studio. We can have multiple cameras. I don't know if you heard of Sling Studio before.
Yeah.
If you Google this, you can find out they're probably sold out a lot of places, like how webcams are these days, right?
Yep. That's why I made my setup.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens, Sling Studio, you can have a live camera, multiple cameras instead of just one camera. My setup is usually a one camera.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to upgrade, say if they want 2 cameras and then they want to bring in, like, for instance, they had a virtual minister that they want to bring in, or they want to bring, people have come up with types of creative ways to do these things. You see them in churches, you see them in conferences, you see, like, I'm doing more. I've always done video work, but I'm doing more video work. I'm doing photography work all the time too, but my video work, especially when it comes to conferences and things like that, has increased. I know for photographers who listen to this, they say video, they start running away. I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to read it. But I'm telling you, it will save you when you're bored and when you don't have anything to shoot and someone needs a virtual conference or something edited, a live stream. You better pick up iMovie or learn Final Cut real quick.
Yeah.
It'll help your bottom line.
Yeah. And I mean, those organizations and companies, they'll pay whatever to get it done. Now that they don't have to pay for a building maybe, or they don't have to pay for food.
Catering. They don't have to pay for catering.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now, Adam, with people who have conferences, they're doing them as they tape to live. So instead of doing them live, we're recording segments of the conference, each speaker, and then I'm putting them together on one timeline, and then they're using it as a YouTube premiere or a Facebook premiere.
Yeah.
Like it's live.
That's
so
smart.
There's opportunities out there, not just for live events, because that could scare some people away, but for tape to live events. And you've seen it all the time. People will use cut-ins, as they call them.
Yeah. Well, it's what you just mentioned too. That's just like Apple yesterday, at the time of recording, released a new watch and a new iPad, and with they're not meeting in person anymore for events right now, so they did exactly that. They just put together a huge video and played it, and it felt like a live video, but it easily could have not been live yesterday, right? Like they had a chance to do a different take, right? And that's just regular video, like there's
correct.
All your final deliverable for them is like, hey, here's the video file,
And then they play it at 12 noon on Friday afternoon, like it's a live video as a premiere.
That's awesome.
And I think that's the thing where we're missing, that everybody needs this stuff now, especially now going forward.
Yeah.
Since we can't have huge gatherings, and this is where we are in the world. So
it is what it is.
This is how we pivoted.
I love it. So tell me a little bit more for people who are starting real basics. So I know you and I both have church production backgrounds with this kind of streaming video stuff, but So somebody's got their camera hooked up. We're coming out HDMI, right? They're on a tripod, right? Because you guys, we want it to be stable. Which another thing is photographers that, especially wedding photographers, none of us own tripods unless we start doing video. But we go into your little, and which I had never even heard of this, the Teradek thing. So that's a proprietary piece of hardware that does the streaming for you. You can skip the laptop.
Yes, correct. You're going to tear it. It's going to run over $1,000, so it's a little investment. So it's not like $200 equipment. So it's at the time of this taping, it's probably about maybe $1,200 or $999 or something like that.
Sure,
that's the minimum. So you're gonna put that on top of your camera, and you just plug that in the HDMI, and then you configure it with your iPad or your iPhone or your Android.
Okay,
and that's how you configure it on your phone with the app. You connect to the internal Wi-Fi of the device,
right,
and then you push it out through your hotspot or your internet wirelessly.
Okay.
But I use a hotspot because I don't trust venues or people's home Wi-Fi. I've been burned way too many times. Yeah. So I just go every month and I use a hotspot. I use 10 gigs and then I just shut it off. You get a Verizon or T-Mobile, no contract. Yep. So you just use it and then shut it off.
I love that. Yeah. Venue internet can never be trusted. So.
Oh, ever. I've been burned. And I've been with some really good venues, and I was like, oh my God. And especially now that venues aren't open, I'm doing more backyard stuff out there in the wild. I was at the, this venue well, Carnegie Institute of Science. Yeah, Carnegie, right on the steps. Yep. We did a wedding stream right on the steps. That's awesome. Of course, she's like, you can use our Wi-Fi. No one's using it. I said, no, ma'am, I don't trust that. Yep. I don't care if nobody's on there. Who knows what can happen, and then I have no control.
Yeah,
and if you know anything about technology, especially from the church world, especially I work for a lot of pastors, and they are control freaks. When stuff goes wrong, Adam, I'm telling you, man, it's like I work for a guy that is a good friend of mine, but oh my God, if something went wrong, Yeah. So it's a lot. So your contracts have to be airtight, but you have to make sure you do a test.
Yeah.
So I always say you test, but you verify. So I do all my tests, and I train people on this here locally, and I tell people that you can get all the equipment, but remember, I'm telling you to save you time because it's happened to me where I had a friend of mine have to give money back because he didn't have the proper equipment or didn't have all the stuff. So just pay for the regular stuff.
Yeah.
And so you can, and silly things like charging batteries. I mean, it's so minute that you don't understand that it's happened, that people leave a cord or you didn't charge a battery and the stream goes down. One small thing.
Yeah.
But what I tell people, Adam, I said, people, let's say if you charge $1,000, people pay you $1 for the streaming services and $999 because you know how to stream.
Yeah.
Because they're paying you because your know-how, not because your equipment. So $1 for that, $999 for how to stream.
Yeah.
Because you're the expert and you get it set up. Real quick story. I was doing a stream not too long ago, and I don't think my customer will ever hear this, but anyway, I'm going to say the story. Me and my colleague, my good friend Trinae, she's with me all the time, and I was always in Leesburg. So if you know anything where Leesburg, Virginia is in the DMV area, it's pretty far from, well, at least from where I am. It's like 45, maybe a good 60 miles. And there's this road in Maryland called the Dulles Toll Road. And if you know anything about the Dulles Toll Road, it's usually crowded, but it was a Sunday, and I was like, 60 miles, I'll get there. And of course, it was a backup at the toll booth, at one of those toll booths. And my God, I was coming to do a stream. They're supposed to start the wedding at 5 p.m. I swear to you, I promise you, Adam, I got there at 4:48 p.m. Oh my God, the mother of the bride was freaking out because they was gonna start this on time, and I was like, oh, they're not gonna start the wedding on time. Oh, the heck they did. Yeah. And they were waiting on me. And Trinae, my colleague, was like, oh my God. And I just set that thing up so quickly. She was like, wow, you set that thing in 5 minutes. I said, Trinae, because I know what the heck I'm doing. I wasn't bragging.
Exactly.
But I said, people are paying me for my know-how. If I was an amateur, it would take me 20 minutes to set up. Yeah. But I got that thing up, and I got the stream up, and I got it working because I had things in place. Yeah, it was my fault for almost being late, and the mother of the bride was freaking out. Because when she called me at 4:40, she said, you were supposed to be here at 4:30. I said, I know. I got caught up in traffic. I underestimated. Yeah. And it's a Sunday afternoon, bro. Yeah. It's not, weddings. I didn't even have to shoot prep. All I had to be there on time. And I was like, you know what? So I make mistakes too. I got it. I made it right, but I was like, "Woo!" If I had one more toll to go through, because even though I have an easy pass, but I have one more, but it was backed up. The easy for whatever reason. You know how you ever go to a gig that you're like, "Oh my God, I just made it."
Yeah.
And they were waiting on me because the father and mother were in the hospital. They couldn't come to the wedding, so they were waiting on the stream. And all these other guests.
Wow.
So they were nervous. So anyway.
Yeah. That's crazy. That is crazy. I want to talk, so just for anybody listening, I want to break it down even more for the streaming. We talked about that piece of gear, the Teradek, but if you didn't want to use something like that, what a lot of people seems like they're using is, again, you got to go to the camera, HDMI, if people are keeping track, and then you're going to go into a device, right? And that device is going to change your video signal into, digital, something the computer can understand. So if you want to bring a laptop, a lot of those pieces of gear are a little bit cheaper. So if you didn't want to spring for the $1,200,
correct,
you could do something like that. But there are pros and cons of that. Is like, all right, your computer needs a charger now. Your camera, probably can't use a battery if you're doing like a long Catholic ceremony, or gotta,
and then you're carrying more equipment, and then you gotta make sure all the plugs are in with the laptop. It doesn't come out of your camera.
Yeah,
it's just a lot more points of failure. The more equipment you introduce into any production, especially if it's a mobile production. And if you don't have power, I'm doing stuff outside. Like this ceremony where I rush again, it was outside. It was outside at it's called Russ Manor House. It was in Leesburg, Virginia. So it was like nowhere,
So are you still able to stream? Are you just streaming off the battery from the camera? You use like a battery grip for a little extra juice?
Just a regular battery for about an hour. And the Teradek that I use, it's a good hour battery. But I could plug it in USB-C if I had to.
Okay,
if I had
a little bit of charge.
But I've never had something mobilely go longer than an hour. Like something inside of a church or a house of worship, I've had that going longer than an hour. But anything outside, especially during the summer months, people are not going to sit outside for an hour.
Yeah, in the heat, I guess too. That's something somebody could test. It sounds silly, but like, why not test it in your home? Run it for an hour. See how much battery.
See the battery.
Exactly. Like get a gauge. Like as we head into fall and winter, batteries do worse in cold, especially mirrorless. That's my number one thing about mirrorless. After doing a year's, the battery life is the pits, man. Okay. So then, too, if people are streaming on the computer, at least for me, I only know of like 2 or 3 programs that people have been using only because of this year in the church world. It's like we used to use this thing called Wirecast if somebody wanted to break into that, if they're using the computer, and that's where you're going to get a little bit more fancy, right? You're going to throw up some slides, or you're going to play some music or a slideshow or something like that, or pictures or whatever. And you can choose to like, I don't know, on the Teradek, I imagine you could choose like, hey, send this to Zoom or send this to Facebook or send this to YouTube, stuff like that.
You can stream I don't know if it's Zoom, but I know you can send to Facebook, YouTube.
Okay.
They have Twitch or even
like the big guys,
all the big ones. Okay. And most people do it, and then a lot of people want private streams. And what I do, I just make it unlisted on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I do.
Yeah.
Or if they want a public stream, most people want private. I just make it unlisted. I don't have a password on there or anything like that.
No, that's smart too. That's something to consider, especially in the DC area. We do a lot of work for people that have a little bit more private life, so that's smart. Maybe I'll be your competitor. I'll be the Zoom guy. I'll only do Zoom though. It's like if they want to go to YouTube, I'll be like,
I can't take all the business, so you're good. I don't mind. You're good.
Now I've perfected my Zoom setup. That's awesome, man. Some other programs too that people need to know is like, so Wirecast, OBS, but that one's the nerdiest one. I could not get it.
Yeah, OBS is hard.
Yeah, and then
OBS is hard.
I use for the Facebook Lives in our Facebook group, I use Ecamm Live, and that will help me go to Zoom, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, whatever. But it costs money. It's like a $300 program and then a subscription, and so you're still, though, compared to regular photography equipment, all this stuff is moderately inexpensive to. Like, what's the biggest package for you for streaming a wedding? Like, if somebody wants a 3-camera, what can you make off of it?
You can make. I mean, the basic package I have, the lowest package I have is $850. That's just for the 1-camera basic
for like an hour.
Yeah, hour, and it never goes that much. Usually $850. Sometimes it may be $1,200 depending on what they want. But I've seen where we've charged like $3,000-$4,000. Like, I know that sounds crazy for a stream.
No, it's valuable though to people. You know?
I mean, it's crazy. But remember, they wanted live look-ins. They wanted so and so to be on camera and then hooked up to an HDMI TV. So, for instance, there was a mother that wanted to speak, but she was in the hospital. So we pre-recorded a video of her at the hospital. Well, she recorded, not we. We couldn't go in the hospital, of course.
Wow.
And sent that video. And it wasn't live, but it was recorded as live. So
Sure.
remember, people see stuff online and they're like, okay, so you watch, these Republican and Democratic conventions, and you see how they did the productions. Not saying that the weddings have to be like that, but they're have live look-ins and lower thirds. If you don't know, those are graphics and all this stuff. So the more people you have, the more stuff you want, and the more participation. So, for instance, if you need a HDMI TV, so you want people like, well, I want my people to be able to see the people who are watching it, like a Zoom party or whatever.
Yeah, they want to see the gallery view.
Yeah, they see the gallery. It's just, here's the thing: you can have whatever you want, but you're just going to pay for it.
Yeah.
you can have whatever you like. It's like a la carte. So they can go up to, I've seen them as cheap as $500 to $4,000, $5,000, depending on what people want. I don't think there's a price list per se, but I think it's just really you ask people who are in production, and people like us who know church production are probably the best people to ask, because we used to do this week in and week out.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate my background was in that too, that it wasn't a real large learning curve for me.
Yeah.
It was, but remember, church production was easy for me because we were in a church. We weren't mobile it wasn't a different situation every weekend.
Yeah.
We were in the same building. Unless, we were in the same building every weekend. So we just had the same internet. We had, so it's a little easier. But this is harder because you're in a different venue every time you do it,
One question that I feel like in the DMV we don't hit too often, but what if you do run into that place that maybe doesn't have internet, or is that talked about before you sign? You say, hey, can you at least tell me if there's cell coverage there? Do you look at the coverage map or something for T-Mobile?
Yeah. So what I do now, actually, Adam, is like, and I've told the guys who I mentee and ladies I mentee, this is a pro tip for your audience. If you're going to sign a contract, what I would suggest you do, you charge a test fee. So what that is that you charge, for instance, like there was a place out in, I can't remember, somewhere in North Virginia that was far, right? And I knew that cell phone's signal would be sketchy.
Yeah.
So I went there and I did a test, but I charged the couple for it. And I said, you know what? It'll be, $200 fee for me to go down and do the test. Now, that fee will come out if you hire me, but if it doesn't work, that's just my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But at least it showed me as an expert. Guess what they did? They hired me because I took the time to do the due diligence. Did I want to drive out on a Tuesday afternoon to do it? And I know cell coverage can vary from day to day and month to month, but at least I went out there and I had proof of concept. And then they showed it, and the venue said, okay, good.
Yeah.
So now, can I do that for every venue? Of course I can't.
Yeah.
But if it's that important to them, people invest with what they want to invest in, right?
Totally.
So that's what I said. You could charge you $150 to $250 and just take that off the fee if they hire you. If they don't hire you, it's your time.
Chip, I'm gonna put this over you right now to speak this into your life. I'd be charging more, man. I'd be like, just like an engagement session, $500-$600 for an hour. I'd be like, hey, that's my test fee price. I'm going out for $600, and we're gonna speak money into Chip's life right now.
Hey man. Well, yeah. Well, if you're not charging, I can't charge $3,000 for a test, but I can charge at least $500 for a test. I'm only out there like 15 minutes. It takes me longer to drive. I'm there like literally 15 minutes.
Yeah, you got to test the parking. You got to test the cell coverage.
Yeah. But people aren't paying us for our time. They're paying us for our knowledge. Remember,
exactly. Oh, hey, if I stay there the whole hour, I have more knowledge. I did.
Yeah.
No, I love it. That's awesome, man. I feel like the one last thing I'll say for people who are maybe looking to dive into streaming weddings and stuff like this is it seems like this is something that, depending on where you live, is going to be valuable at least for like extra valuable for at least another year. And then even after that, though, like wedding streaming could just become a cool thing, and like, for a couple, if they're like, hey, we can get Chip Dizard for, $1,500-$1,800, he's going to come stream our wedding, even if we're having, 200 people here, like a normal, why not? Why not just have, an extra vendor add on your streaming team, So I think that's awesome. I think it'd be valuable for people who are, how can I make more money with the same gear I have? Or how can I pivot to something different? Or maybe, for me, Chip, maybe you feel this, but I always, at weddings, I'm always reminded that I am getting old. Every single wedding, I'm like, oh, okay, 12 hours, 10 hours. Streaming, you make $850 for an hour. showing up
or less,
you know, show up.
No portraits, no editing, no nothing. I mean, you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like nothing. Don't have to deal with. All you gotta do is just one thing, but you got to make sure stuff works.
That's right.
So when I went to that wedding in Leesburg, I was there when me and my colleague were there. She's like, "Oh, that's all." I said, "Yeah, we're done." By 5 o'clock, by 6 o'clock, we were in our car going back home.
That's right. That's right. You're like, hey, we're paying for us to drive out, get Taco Bell, shoot this thing, you know. But I view it, and I saw you do it, and I was like, this is brilliant. This is a good opportunity as things are rescheduling, but people still want to stream. You know, I helped one couple. I shot their wedding in their home, and I had already perfected my Zoom setup at home, and I said, hey, can I just bring this to try, you know, and if I test it and it works, you know, then we can use it for your wedding. And it was really cool. And we streamed it, but we also got a recording of the ceremony. So that was a little bonus for them.
Yeah. And that's all they want. They don't need a cinematic trailer right now. And here's the thing about that. If you don't do video, you can hire somebody to do a bonus. I do that all the time. So I do the streaming, and then you add on a la carte a cinematic edit. You bring another camera guy or lady with you that has a gimbal, and they can do the cinematic shots. Yeah. While you just do the steady shot.
I love it, man.
That's how you make more. I'm giving all the game out. I'm not giving all this game out. I'm giving your audience. I'm giving too much game out.
I told you we wanted it to be the best, man. No, man. I love it. Well, Chip, tell me, you mentioned something about, as we're coming to a close, you mentioned there's a place where people can find out more about this. So people can maybe read that blog post, or they can get mentorship on streaming weddings. They can ask you the questions they might be scared about as far as, you know, racism goes, you know, so they can get access to everything. So where is the best place for people to go to find the goodies?
So you're going to find out everything about me at my teaching site. It's chipdizard.com. I have the diversity link. I have the speaking link. Facebook, streaming, everything right there. If you don't see it, hit the contact button. If you're just looking weddings and brides, go to my Chip Dizard wedding site. But just type my name, Chip Dizard, DIZARD.com. You can hit me on the gram as well, but that's where everything is.
Boom. There it is, everybody. Chip, that was awesome, man.
Man, thank you for having me.
Man, I love Chip. This is such a good guy, such a cool thing to kind of understand. And I wanted to, you know, kind of a weird episode where I wanted to talk about two different things, right? You know, Chip being an African-American black man from the DMV, right, this area, that's something that I don't want to be quiet about, you know, even months after it seemed like it was popular to talk about. And so I had to talk to him about that a little bit, his experience, especially in our world, right? Whereas if we don't see it, you know, we might not hear about it. And I wanted to get his perspective and kind of his insight. I would encourage you to email him, you know, tell him that you like the episode, ask the questions you want to ask. This is an open space, and he's so generous with his time and his words, and he's such a really cool guy. And then on the other side of things, with the streaming weddings during the time of COVID-19, I want to go stream weddings right now. $850 for an hour. That's not bad. I've got all the gear. So, you know, if you are looking into streaming weddings or want to ask more questions about the gear and the workflow and the process, I would encourage you to email Chip. He's so nice, such a great guy, and learn from him. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Do me one quick favor after you email Chip. I would love for you guys to come join our Facebook group at togfb.com. Free Facebook group where we do workshops every month, helping photographers grow and build better businesses. We'd love to have you in there. togfb.com. Come join. Just come hang out. It'll be awesome to have you in there. We've got some goals we want to hit by the end of the year. I want you to be a part of that. Have a wonderful day, guys. Keep being awesome.